Hello everybody, my name is Rachel and welcome to another weekly reading or wrap-up. It is once again very early on a Sunday morning. I'm very grouchy and kind of out of sorts because I didn't sleep very well last night. Neighbors, God, sometimes I just get really pissed at my neighbors. Anyway, despite all of that, I read a bunch of really fun and good things this past week. I think I mentioned in my last wrap-up that I was going to just pick up things that I knew I would love and that would be fun rather than trying to get through some books that maybe wouldn't be the best. And I did go that route and it was very fun and I plan on doing it again this next week. So the best thing I read for the first time this past week is Network Effect by Martha Wells. I thought I should do like a separate standalone review of this book, but actually I just want to read it again, like right now, just read it again and then talk about it after another reread because I enjoyed it so much and I don't necessarily feel like talking about it. Have you ever had that feeling where like you just were really into something, it hit all the right spots for you, and then when you're done, you're just really quiet about it, you just want to think about it and go back to it or whatever? That is basically how I feel with Network Effect right now. It was another perfect Murderbot story. So basically the story picks up a little bit after the end of Exit Strategy. Murderbot has had some intervening escapades. I take it there are some things that have happened in between the stories, but it is kind of settled into working for Dr. Mensa a bit more. It's more acquainted with her extended family, and in this story it goes off as a security unit for another preservation expedition that Mensa's daughter is on, and things go badly. Suddenly a ship appears and wants to take them all prisoner and they're like, why? It was just thoroughly good, and art reappears, and not in quite the way that I expected, but we got a lot more about Art and Murderbot's relationship, and also Murderbot's relationship with the various humans and stuff. It's definitely developing, I think, better relationships with people, and still has its ongoing anxieties and doesn't want to deal with certain things, but it's getting better and making friends. And that is probably the thing that I love the most about the story, is Murderbot makes friends, and it's great. Then I read volumes 7 and 8 of The Girl from the Other Side by Nagabe. Now I am caught up with the English translations and hope later this year we'll get volume 9. And these two volumes, especially volume 8, is where things start to really happen, and I feel like the stakes have gone up in this series. We've had like about 6 straight volumes of Teacher taking care of Shiva and sheltering her from a lot of danger and the people hunting her, all the soldiers after them. And in these volumes, things honestly start to fall apart. And I guess it's weird, I'm not so concerned about Shiva's safety. I'm way more concerned with what is happening to Teacher. There are a few things that happen to him in these volumes that I just was like, oh my god, that's devastating, no. I don't want to spoil anything, but things have changed. I feel like there's been a bit of a tone shift, and we're getting into some of the nitty-gritty and not so pleasant things in this world now, and I'm really enjoying it. Very interested to see where the story is going, and it's playing on all of my emotions now. After that, I decided to read Strange Planet by Nathan Pyle. This is a collection of a bunch of his comics. I've seen many of these, probably most of them, on Instagram over the years, and it's basically these little cartoony alien humans doing just very banal, normal, mundane things, but describing it and speaking about it in very strange terms, like teeth are mouth stones. That's just disturbing. But I've really enjoyed these comics just on and off over the years for kind of highlighting just how weird our lives are. Some of these are just incredibly hilarious, and it's just a different way of saying what we already say and what we already do. It's really fun. So yeah, I consumed this entire little collection in a single day, and I think that a second volume called Stranger Planet is coming out a little bit later this year, and I will pick that up as well. I think that these comics are really, really popular, so you probably don't need me to tell you about them, but yeah, they're really fun. I recommend them. Next up is Finna by Nino Cipri. This is one of my anticipated stories of the year, and it did not disappoint. I really, really enjoyed this and would love to read more. So Finna is about this is really big on the evils of capitalistic big box stores and retail jobs, and yeah. Also heavy on relationship drama. So this is about Ava and her ex Jules. They've broken up 3 days prior, but they are working together at an IKEA style store called Littenvarld, which Littenvarld is really hard for me to say for some reason. Unfortunately, a customer in the store wanders off and steps through a wormhole into an other world, like a parallel Littenvarld, and the most junior members of the staff are assigned to go retrieve her with a device called a Finna. And of course, those junior members of staff are Ava and Jules. So they go off and have to confront how they feel about each other and their emotional and relationship drama at the same time as they're having adventures going through parallel worlds and the dangers and excitement of that, trying to find a lost customer, or at least a parallel universe version of the lost customer to bring home. And it was really enjoyable. I love this idea. You know, I've only ever been to IKEA once, and if it's really a hellish place, I haven't felt it. But like I said, this is pretty heavy on just how awful retail jobs are and how poorly employees are treated and everything. And I felt that. Like, I've never actually worked that type of job myself, but I feel that. The one thing about this that, like, I was intrigued by the characters, but kind of annoyed by how much they kept coming back to their emotional upheavals and their relationship drama. And I get that they were in a really, really intense relationship for a brief amount of time, and then it fell apart, possibly due to their own personal problems and needing to work that out. But it kept coming back to it even in situations where I didn't think that realistically people would. When you're running for your life from horrible monsters and people that want to, like, I don't know, kill you and take your blood or whatever, that's not a point where a normal person would suddenly be like, I need to reevaluate every way I've treated this person that is my ex and everything. Like, you're just not maybe thinking about that. So I found that a little bit unrealistic. However, I really liked the characters, and I felt like they both gave some really good representation in the story. Ava has anxiety and depression, and Jules is trans and I believe non-binary because, well, they use they pronouns, as well as being a person of color. And the story is told from Ava's point of view, and I thought that I would have enjoyed it even more if it had actually been from Jules's perspective, because I thought that they were actually more interesting and didn't have some of the annoying emotional tics that Ava did. I'm really nitpicking on this. I mean, it was not terrible to read. I enjoyed it. And the way that it ended, I would love to see a sequel. I would love to see further adventures with the wormholes and all of that, and come back to the characters and learn more about them, and specifically to learn more about these two beyond their possibly failed love relationship with each other, because people are so much more than a single love affair, basically. But yeah, this was quite good, and I would love to read more by Nino Cipri. I feel like this story, what I've pointed out about it that I didn't like so much is probably just new writer problems, and anything that Cipri writes after this will probably be even better. I don't really know what else they've written, but really hoping there's going to be a sequel novella of sorts to this. And then, you guessed it, I continued my reread of the Penric and Desdemona novellas by Lois, McMaster, Bujold. I'm rereading the first 7 so that I can go on to read the newest one, The Physicians of Velnak. So I reread Penric's Last Mission, Mira's Last Dance, and The Prisoner of Limnos. And this is my 3rd read of these, and they continue to just be exactly what I love. I love them so much. Penric's Mission is my favorite of all of the Penric and Desdemona novellas. I've said this multiple times before. This is basically the kickoff of a 3-part story arc where Penric he's gone through a really like depressive, basically suicidal moment in his career where he was forced to be a physician in circumstances that are soul-crushing. He escapes from that, he's working for a different archdivine, and he's ready for the next thing. He just wants to move on to the next thing, and so he is going kind of undercover on a mission to Sidonia to deliver an invitation from, I think, the Duke of Adria to the Sidonian general Arisadia. This isn't treasonous. I mean, it's kind of like a business deal. Hey, I want to hire you, come, you know, lead my troops for me and fight my battles. It's like, it's not outright treason, but it's do it on the down low. But when Penric arrives in Sidonia, he's immediately discovered. He doesn't know how. They confiscate his letter, they throw him in a bottle dungeon, and they arrest Arisadia. Penric does escape from the bottle dungeon, and this is the thing that I love so much about this particular novella, but also it is emblematic? Whatever. It's the thing about the entire series, about Penric and Des that I love, is when he realizes that his mission is a bust, he can't do anything, and Arisadia has been arrested. Arisadia has had his eyes put out with boiling vinegar, and Penric doesn't know how much of this, if any of it, is actually his fault, but he's done. He could just go home to Adria, and he doesn't. He finds Arisadia, and he offers his assistance with a cover story as a physician, and he attempts to rebuild Arisadia's eyes. He doesn't have to do this. He really doesn't want to be a physician. At the same time, he is a physician sorcerer. He does have these abilities and he takes pride in his work. He wants to do the right thing for this person that he feels he might have led to a horrible thing happening to them. And at the same time, he's falling in love with Arisadia's sister, Nikis. And that just like kicks off the next 3 novellas. So yes, I love so much about Penric's mission, and this is kind of up to the point where they, like as a group, Arisadia, Nikis, and Penric have to flee Sidonia. And then Mira's Last Dance, nope, not that one, this one, is a very brief story. It's probably the shortest of all these novellas, probably more like a novelette, is how they actually get out of Sidonia, and it's hilarious. It has some extended sequences of Penric cross-dressing and taking on the persona of Mira, who is one of his demon's prior riders, and she was a courtesan. And it's so enjoyable. I think I enjoyed it even more upon this reread. It's just fun, basically. And then The Prisoner of Limnos is when Penric is now outright courting Nikis, and she asks him for a favor to help her rescue her mother, who is being held captive back in Sidonia. And rereading this particular novella, I was struck by how solid it is, how good it is. I mean, I love Penric's mission, but The Prisoner of Limnos is proof that this series was not flagging by the 7th novella. This is just so good, and it has a very satisfying conclusion to all the story threads throughout this and the 2 prior novellas. So I'm almost done with my reread. I'm currently in the middle of rereading The Orphans of Raspe, which is the 7th one. I wanted to listen to it on audiobook because when I read all these novellas for the 2nd time, I did listen to the Blackstone audio books, and the one for The Orphans of Raspe doesn't come out until October of this year, and I'm like, come on! So yeah, I have to reread it on ebook, and then I will get my hardcover later in June. And then after that, I will go on to The Physicians of Velnak. And yeah, I think that was everything that I read. Let me check my list. I did forget one. Defy or Defend by Gail Carriger. This is the latest of her Parasol verse novellas. It is number 2 in the Delightfully Deadly series, which seems to be exploring the happily ever afters and epilogues of various schoolmates of Sophronia's from the Finishing School series. Defy or Defend is about Dimity, who honestly I had forgotten everything about until I started reading the story and some things started to come back to me. Dimity has been working as an intelligencer for some time. She seems to specialize in basically seducing and flirting with men and getting their secrets from them. Her assigned safety is a man named Crispin, and the very classic romance situation. They're totally into each other, they fancy each other, but they've somehow convinced themselves that the other is not interested, which is a misconception they very quickly rectify in the story, which is one of the things I loved about this. So basically Dimity and Crispin are assigned for another mission where they're going to a vampire hive. The vampire is going to goth, and if their queen doesn't pull herself out of her funk and build the hive back up, they might become dangerous and have to be put down by sundowners. So this is basically a makeover story where Dimity sweeps into a vampire hive, pretending to be a poor starving artist, which she's obviously not, and instead kind of becomes the housekeeper. She just redecorates their home and introduces them to a new fashion, and she's really, really good at her job, which is the other thing I really enjoyed about this story. There's also the whole fake marriage thing, because she and Crispin have to pretend to be married in this, and they have to share a bed and everything. I feel like there are a lot of romance tropes in this and it works really well. So they very quickly in these close circumstances admit their dreams for their future and that they like each other, and that was great. I was so glad that there wasn't a lot of agonizing and dancing around the fact that they liked each other but weren't sure about the other person. It was really sweet. I enjoyed it, and it wasn't as explicit, with sex and everything as some of the previous Parasol verse novellas have been, in case that's something you don't want to read. And then there's the fact that Dimity is a really competent person, and Crispin, the guy who's assigned to her to protect her on this mission, realizes that. He repeatedly remarks, she's good at her job and I'm just gonna let her do it. And I love that very, very much. The only downside of this story for me was that I didn't really love Dimity. The type of person that she is, very much into fashion and frills and jewelry. She comes across as a little bit materialistic and vapid at times, which is, that sounds very harsh. She's not really my type of person, even though I admired certain things that she was doing. Crispin, however, I really enjoyed him. He takes backstage to Dimity a lot in the story, but I thought he was a really good guy, and I thought that he and Dimity were great together. This is one that I'll definitely come back to because it was just good fun, and apparently I really like reading makeover stories. That is really the end now. Those are all the books that I read this past week, and my battery is about to die, so let's wrap this up. Let me know if you have read any of these, or if you want to, leave me a comment down below. I'm looking forward to another great reading week, and yeah, until next time, bye.